Hi, my name is Annette Rue. I am the district coordinator for the South Dakota Fine Arts Festival. And I want to say on behalf of our DYD, Tyler Tufte, and myself and our whole team, thank you so much for being a part of this event. Thank you for agreeing to be an evaluator. You truly are the hub of the Fine Arts Festival, and we could not do it without you. And we're so thankful that you have a passion for the arts and then also want to invest in our South Dakota students. And I know that this experience will be a very enjoyable one. Just the energy and the excitement that it generates in the students and leaders and parents is something that's really fun to be a part of. And so we're so glad that you could join us. This video is intended to be kind of an orientation and a training and a refresher of all of the information to understand what's expected of a fine arts evaluator. If you have any experience doing any school type competitions, there are some similar elements, but there's a lot of real intentionality that is built into fine arts. And it comes from the national office and then down at the South Dakota level. There are just some really important components that we want to make sure are communicated to you so that you know what we're looking for when you come to the event. If I could talk about vision to start out, the national office has dubbed the vision statement as discover, develop, and deploy. And obviously those things are kind of self-explanatory. We want to help students discover the gifts that God has deposited in them, in their lives, and to experiment with those, and then to develop them also, that we want to help them grow in their area of gifting as much as we can. We'd love to see this area of coaching and mentoring be developed even more at the district level going forward. And then finally, deploy. The ultimate goal for these students is not to perform and have these entries evaluated at the district level. Really, it's ultimately so that they can deploy them in their community, their churches, for the glory of God, and that use their gifts in order to pursue kingdom purpose with them. And so that's the vision behind this. That's why we do what we do and put a lot of hours and details into the event. And that's why it's so worth it, because we're helping students discover the ways that they can minister for their Heavenly Father using their gifts. We want to help students pursue excellence, and so we're always trying to kind of guide them and lead them toward that lovingly and intentionally and carefully. The ultimate purpose is to glorify God. So now let's jump into the general information about evaluators. There is a team that you will work with. Every evaluating team is a team of 3. That is the typical team number. In some cases, we might add 1 or 2 to do some active feedback, and we'll let you know about those particular categories individually. On every team, there are 3 roles. So each of the evaluators takes one of the roles, and we will usually reach out to the lead evaluator. That's the first one, and we'll ask you to be the lead evaluator, typically because you have experience evaluating in that area. Or perhaps if you're all new to the Fine Arts Festival, the lead evaluator, we may ask them just because of the level of expertise, would be another example. The lead evaluator, we ask them to sit in the middle of the panel. You'll be set up at a table in the evaluation area together, a little bit away from the audience so that we can keep your scoring protected and confidential. If you feel like you need more space for any reason, please let us know. So the lead evaluator would sit in the middle. They're going to keep an eye on the point spreads between the 3 of you. We don't want to have a drastic point spread, more than 3 or 4 points difference between the evaluators, because that would indicate that there's a very different perspective on the performance. We want to make sure the lead evaluator also makes sure that the name of the participant is the same on all of the scoring sheets. The schedule, it moves pretty consistently, but sometimes quickly through the day, and so it's easy to get those mixed up. So we'd like to ask the lead evaluator to keep an eye on that. Also to check for consistency in the scoring and also rule violations. If there are some pretty drastic differences in scoring, please take a few moments to discuss the reason for that, so that way you can make an adjustment so that it is more consistent. We want everyone to have their individual insight, especially in the comments. But the lead evaluator, we ask them to just keep an eye on to make sure that we're all on the same page in general and coming out within the same range of points. And the rule violations, we'll want to make sure everyone annotates that on their score sheet. The lead evaluator, we also like to have you work very closely with the room moderator, which I'll explain in a moment, to ensure that the room is quiet and respectful during evaluation and also in between. So feel free to just take the lead on your team. The second role for evaluators is a timekeeper, which is pretty self-explanatory. Typically use a stopwatch like on a cell phone for each presentation. And the time guidelines are included in the rule book for each category and definitely should be verified before evaluation begins. There are also notification of timelines for teardown and setup in some categories as well. We'd like the timekeeper to be aware of that and to note whether they stayed within those guidelines. The timekeeper can also notify the room moderator when all of the evaluators have finished scoring the previous entry and they're ready to proceed. For certain categories, as I mentioned, setup and teardown is allowed, and we do need to watch the time on those, even if there is not an entry immediately following, like for teardown, because there are point deductions that are assessed, and that's particularly important at the national festival. So we want the students to practice the national guidelines just the same at our district festival. That way they are prepared for that if they advance to the national level. Do not ever get ahead of schedule. If someone cancels or does not show for a performance, just use that gap to take a break. Stretch your legs, have a snack, use the restroom, but don't ever go ahead of schedule because the students are often involved in multiple categories and that can lead to some schedule mishaps in another venue. Time begins when the participant does anything to indicate that they're starting. So that can be if they are required to do a verbal introduction to their piece, which is new in the last couple of years. The students are asked to do that anytime there's music involved. They're asked to first give a verbal introduction. So that would indicate the starting of their time. If they have any movement or acting that's related to the performance, if a soundtrack begins, for example, if there are accompanying instruments and they tune or just quickly play, that does not indicate the start time. That would be included in their setup time. And so that's the role of the timekeeper. For the rules, the evaluator that we ask to keep an eye on the rules, there are rule books provided at every table in every venue. And so we would ask the rules evaluator to keep that rule book close and to review the general rules before each category begins. Oftentimes, you're evaluating for an entire division in one room. And so if you switch from woodwinds to strings, for example, before you go to strings, we'd ask you to review the rules and make sure if there are any differences from previous categories that you're clear on that and you communicate those, any differences that may apply to the other evaluators on your team. Consult with the team if you feel that a rule has been violated. So the rules evaluator would hopefully be the one that catches that right away and make sure to talk with the team about it. If there's any subjectivity, then we would ask you to not deduct a score violation, but to mention it in your comments. That if it was close but not a clear violation, mention it in the comments so that they can adjust that. Another part of your team that's very crucial for the weekend is the volunteer staff. We have a bunch of volunteers that come from a couple of churches and then some of our colleges to support the event. And again, they are so crucial. And you will have a team of volunteers in each of your rooms. Evaluators, you're going to want to work very closely with those volunteers to create the best possible experience for everyone coming in and out of that room. You are a team, and so evaluators, we would ask you ultimately to take the lead in the room to making sure that things go well, but don't hesitate to work with the different staff that we have involved. The different roles are a room monitor, and this is a person that you won't see as much of. They're typically assisting with the flow of the room. So they're inside or outside the doors, making sure that no one's coming in or out during performances. They are assisting with people being quiet outside the venue as much as possible, like in the hallways. and then keeping track of the room schedule, and as people come up to check how things are going. If for any reason we would get a little bit behind because of a complication, they would be letting people know that outside the door before they come in. And then just managing the people coming in and out in between performances. Then there's also an MC that's present in every room. They are the person that you are most closely working with. They're up in the front where the participants are coming to perform, and they announce the participants that are about to present. So they will use baseball terms. Up next is such and such. On deck is such and such. In the hole is such and such. And they will do that for the duration of the day. They will also help to keep the audience quiet and assist you if you need anything at your table. If you would like snack or water, they will assist you with that as well. The other volunteers that we have, there's another called a runner. And runners, if we have people that are using paper scoring sheets, they will collect those periodically. And so if you can find one place to compile all those paper scoring sheets at the end of your table, the runner will periodically come in and pick those up and take them to the tally room. They also will just run other errands if something's needed for the room specifically. We also have in many of the venues a sound technician. If music is involved in any way, or tracks, there's a sound technician. They have a challenging job because they are running a lot of different entries, and they have been given specific instruction to keep it basic and to that they can't take specific requests from the participants. We just do our best, and hopefully they have been given the correct information. And if a track is particularly quiet or particularly loud, they can take basic instruction like that, but nothing individual. So if you ever have a question when you're listening to a performance and you feel like, I cannot hear the guitar at all, if you're noticing a trend in a certain issue, we would ask you to, in between performances or on a break, to go back and talk quietly with the sound technician to resolve that issue if you notice a consistent problem. If there is a problem with equipment malfunction or a soundtrack that doesn't start properly, or that that the volume was too quiet at the beginning and the participant couldn't hear it to start at the proper time, please feel free to take the liberty to say, can we stop that and just start that again? We do not do redos for a performance just because of nerves, or I missed my cue, just because they were nervous. But if there is a equipment malfunction or a sound technician makes an error, which can happen in the busyness of the day, please take the initiative to stop the performance and just say, it seems like there was an issue, why don't we restart that, okay? You can send a runner to find me at any time if there's an unusual problem in a room. All of our volunteers will have my cell phone number, and you're also welcome to contact me directly. Let's talk about scoring for a moment, just to give you some general principles about scoring. We would ask that you familiarize yourself with the score sheet ahead of time. We have provided those to you in digital form. There's a Google document for every single category. Even if you do not plan to use digital scoring sheets on site, you'll be able to view the scoring sheet that way. It includes all the criteria. Especially if you are evaluating multiple categories within a division or even a couple of different divisions, we'd ask you to familiarize yourself with that score sheet ahead of time so you understand the breakout of the different sections. For South Dakota Fine Arts Festival, a good rating is the basement for us. On the score sheet, there is a rating for fair, but we will not ever give a student a fair rating. That's just something that's a value to us. We want to give them at least a basic foundation to build from. It can be very difficult to receive a good rating, but a fair rating to us is just not acceptable. So thank you for making good the basement for our students. Each category has very specific guidelines that the participant is required to follow. They have been provided with the rules prior to the festival, and so hopefully they are familiar with them. We will provide a rule book at every venue, as I mentioned. Please familiarize yourself with the rules of your category. There are category-specific chapters laid out in the rule book. I would recommend that you read the general rules at the very beginning of the rule book as well that just apply to the festival in general. There's some general principles that are included there. If you have any questions before about the rules, especially if you have evaluated previously and noticed that there were some subjective questions, we would be happy to address those at the evaluator dinner with you. That's a great time to talk about it as your team, and I'm happy to weigh in on what we're looking for. On the score sheets, we need you to, on every single score sheet, include your initials and your evaluator number. We'll review this with you at the orientation, but the lead evaluator is number 1, the timekeeper is number 2, and the rules is number 3. So it would be, for me, it would be AR1 or 1AR. Either way is acceptable, but we'd like you to indicate that on every score sheet. You must total the points for every section and then give a final total. Sometimes people just write numbers and then don't total at the bottom. It's important for you to also tally and make a final total, because that's going to reflect to you what final designation you think they should receive. If they're receiving a national invitation, a superior with invitation to nationals, or if they're just short of that, we want you to be able to evaluate that in that moment. Please avoid subjective evaluation. Try to be objective as much as possible. So sticking to the criteria that's laid out on the scoring sheet, evaluating them based on that criteria and not on things like your personal preferences, for certain maybe style of music or for the choices that a student makes artistically sometimes may not be in your personal purview, but if they follow the criteria and they do it with excellence, then we'd ask you to score them that way. When in doubt, if it's a subjective kind of question, if you have the time, consult with your fellow evaluators on that. Remember that these are junior and senior high school students. They are not professionals, and most of them have not had a lot of coaching. Some have had some coaching or mentoring, but many of them have had none. And so your evaluation is actually providing a coaching moment for them, which is really, really important. Your comments, we would ask you to make them encouraging, motivating, of course, and helpful, but be specific, be instructive. Sometimes it is difficult for a student to receive a 3 in a certain category, and then they don't have any comment about why they received a 3 in that certain section. Your comments can be critical in a helpful way, but we'd ask you not to make negative comments. Especially personal opinion comments are not appropriate, because we're trying to be objective in our scoring. So be instructive in your comments. Anything less than a 7 would be great if you can comment about why you scored it that way. So if you feel that if there's an extremely high score, you gave them a 10 out of 10 in that section, let the student know why. If you gave them a low score in a specific section, let the student know why, because that's what they're going to be wanting to know in order to develop those gifts going forward. We try to add a little buffer of time so that you can have comments. For those that are using digital scoring sheets, they're finding that they're able to do more commenting, and so we encourage you to do that if that works for you. However, we cannot delay the schedule due to writing comments, so we have to stay on schedule. We're actually on a very tight schedule every year in each of the rooms, so we appreciate that. For those using paper scoring sheets, we ask that you only use pencil for scoring in case we would notice something later and you need to go back and make a change. Regarding receiving the rating of superior with invitation to nationals, we wanted to make a couple of comments to clarify what we're looking for here. We do have a quality control process that happens in the tally room up at the top. So we know with the busyness of the day, sometimes there are issues that we notice on a particular scoring sheet for an event, and the quality control person in the tally room will make sure to take note of that, and we will come back and visit with you to make a clarification. So if you have to leave the festival for any reason, as long as we know that we can reach you, we would really appreciate that. Typically we look for 2 of the 3 at least to score the student in a way to invite them to the national level. And remember to score each entry according to its own merit and not against other participants or other entries, just on their own merit. Our philosophy about rule violations in South Dakota is that if they have violation for any reason, if it would prevent them from going to the national festival, we'll remove the violation, but we will make note of it. We will add an additional note from myself that says, had we applied the rule violation, you would not have advanced to nationals. So we've removed the penalty so that you can advance. Please correct that before you go to the national festival. So we don't want that to ever, inhibit them from going, but we want to make sure they're aware of it. So if there is a violation, apply that on the score sheet no matter what, because we'll make the adjustment in the tally room. If you are new to the festival, or you would just like some more perspective about national level participation, I would encourage you to go to YouTube. If you do a search for National Fine Arts Merit Awards, you will see a number of examples from, I think, almost every category from the last year. You're able to view a video, and that will give you some sense of what to expect at this level, whether it's middle school, high school students. It kind of gives you some context for what they're looking for. We do ask that we don't award sympathy advancements. Often those that we advance that our heart goes out to the student because of tremendous effort or desire, or they're very emotional or very overcome by nerves. Typically, if we advance them and they weren't able to perform under that pressure, they typically do not do very well at the national festival, and in some cases can feel even embarrassed or discouraged. Why am I here? Compared to everyone else, I shouldn't be here, and we don't want to do that to them. However, if you're not giving any superior with invitation ratings on your scores, please take note of that. You may need to consider your own standard and look at your fellow evaluators and see how they are evaluating. And the same principle applies if you're giving a lot of superior with invitation ratings. We just want to be mindful of that. We're also watching that at the tally room as well. And we know that just the length of the day, when you hear someone early in the morning versus, later in the afternoon toward the end of the day, it can be difficult to be objective throughout, and we understand that. So we will have your back and we will consult with you if there's any question. Just try to be mindful of that as you're scoring. Just a few things for general information. Please make students feel comfortable at all times. Smile when you make eye contact with them. Please make eye contact with them. We know that you will be perhaps jotting notes while they're performing to remind yourself of certain things, but try to look up as well as looking down during the scoring process while they're performing. Students are required to include a type of introduction with anything that has a music track, so please take note of that. The schedule cannot be changed for any reason without approval from me. Again, that can affect the schedule in other rooms. So if you see a potential need for a change, or even if a student would come up and request that, please consult with me before doing so. Every participant or group will be called up by name by the MC. That's an easy way for you to verify you have the right scoring sheet in front of you, or if you're digitally scoring, that you make sure that that's what you've entered in your digital scoring sheet. We'd ask that you guard your verbal comments when you are in public spaces or in the hallways. Be very careful. As an evaluator, your words have tremendous weight with our students and their parents and their leaders. So everything you say and do is listened to and carefully monitored by those at the festival. So don't discuss any performances for any reason outside of the venue. Be mindful of who is nearby. If you do need to discuss something, be mindful of that. It's very rare for us that we ever have anyone that gets upset or frustrated, a parent or a leader or a student. If that would happen for any case, do not engage with them. Refer them to me or to our DYD, Tyler Tufte, and we will be happy to talk with them. If you are a veteran evaluator, you may have seen students perform over the years, and the temptation can be to compare them to previous performances. And again, we need objectivity as much as possible. So please just score them based on that current performance. Somebody can have a bad day, and it's unfortunate, but we can't compare it to previous years. We have to go based on that current presentation. The participant's style of dress or appearance should not affect evaluation heavily. If it's a modesty question, or another specific issue that you notice in regard to how they're dressed, make a comment about it in order to educate the student and help them be better prepared, but it should not affect their score. Audience response also should not affect their score. Sometimes they have a lot of friends in the audience, and the excitement of that can help, but try to not let that affect your evaluation. And accompanists in most categories are not a part of the evaluation, and it will indicate that in the rules. Unless they are one of the group members and it's a student participating, then you can evaluate them. But in a lot of cases, it's not considered. So if an accompanist is not as excellent as they could be, please don't let that affect your evaluation, of the vocal entry if that's what you're asked to evaluate. Consider the level of difficulty when evaluating. That can often play a part. And during the presentation itself, please do not talk to any of the other evaluators on your team. Only discuss, if necessary, after you've actually finished your scoring, then if there's any discussion needed. That way, we're not trying to catch up after discussion if it would go too long. And again, do not discuss scores with anyone individually. Even if a student approaches you to ask, we'd ask you to just refer them to the festival staff. And that's why the comments are so crucial and so important for the student. Thank you for your time, for giving me about a half hour here to do this. This allows us, when we come to the festival, to not have to take time there to go over the criteria. This allows us at the festival, when we get to the orientation dinner, you're able to sit in with your team, with your evaluation team, get acquainted with each other a little bit, and to also talk about some of these standards, some of your personal things that you're looking for and watching for, and how you define excellence. So that's the best use of our time together as a team. So thank you so much. We will be praying for you, for safe travel, and for an amazing weekend. God bless you.